So I feel like we know it's coming for sure. Like if you got your mortgage in 2018 at, I don't know, 2.5%, and you're renewing in 2023 on your 5-year fixed, we're going to see that happen for sure. So I haven't had those exact conversations, but I'm sensing as I'm reading people that there's some people that are like, my renewal comes up in April, I better sell this thing.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds. Just get right into it.
All right, the recording has begun. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. I'm really excited to announce just in a second who our guest is for this week. It's someone that I know personally I've learned a lot from in the industry, and we're really excited to have him here. Just before I introduce our guest, if you haven't already and you've been watching our podcast on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Join the growing community. Our goal is still to get us to about 2,000 subscribers by April 1st. That is the deadline that we have set. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, me and Steve just want to say thank you. And if you have any time when you're not driving, because you're probably driving right now, if you could rate us on Apple Podcasts, we would very much appreciate that. As we go into today's guest, Chris Keleher is with us. Chris Keleher runs one of the most successful teams in all of Canada for LePage. He works primarily out of the Collingwood and surrounding areas markets, and got into real estate, I'd say maybe a little bit later in life than me and Steve, and I want to talk about that journey. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm excited to get into it, to dig into things with you here. So.
Let me jump in here. Where's Collingwood?
Thank you for the very kind and flattering intro there.
Well, I read it just off exactly what you told me to say. That's what happened.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey guys, I don't know this. I'm from the wrong coast here. Where's Collingwood?
Where are you at?
I'm out in Surrey, BC.
Okay, so we're like the Whistler of Toronto. So we're 2 hours north. When I say, it's called Blue Mountain. It's a ski town. Okay. But you would hate that we say mountain. I'm certain. If I know other West Coasters and how they feel about that. But we have
I drove through Hamilton once, and they were like, "There's a mountain in Hamilton." I'm like, "Do you mean that little hill on the side of the highway? Is that what the mountain is?"
So that's actually the same escarpment that we ski on. That escarpment goes from Niagara to Owen Sound, I guess. Maybe all the way up to Tobermory. We have a very different ski community. It's more social, kids learning, but we do actually turn out some of the toughest snowboarders from here, because when you snowboard and fall on ice for your childhood, when you go out west, it's like just falling on pillows. So we turn out really tough, half pipers.
What's the market? Is it rural or resort then?
So we're kind of both. So we work in a kind of a unique area because there's 2 counties and 6 municipalities. I live in Collingwood, but Blue Mountain is 4 minutes from me. So Collingwood is just 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers. So we have the city, and then we have the waterfronts, and then we have the chalets, and then we have the rural farms, and then Creemore, which you probably heard Creemore out there, Creemore Brewery,
like the beer, yeah.
Yeah. So that town. So so we kind of do all of it, and commercial as well. So we mix it up.
Now, primarily you're in Collingwood, but what's the areas you service? So it's like Collingwood, Blue Mountain. Is it like Meaford, Thornbury? Is it all the areas?
Yeah. So we call it Southern Georgian Bay, and the core of it is Collingwood, Blue Mountain, like the Blue Mountain Resort area, but the Blue Mountain Resort is in the town of the Blue Mountains, and the town of the Blue Mountains has Thornbury and Meaford, and that's sort of the west side of our market. And then we will service down into Clearview, which is where Creemore is, and then a little bit into Wasaga, but Wasaga's like 45 minutes wide. So we're 15 minutes to Wasaga, so we don't want to be on the other side of Wasaga and doing like an hour drive.
Right. And so so you got 3 boys.
Yep.
Are they all avid skiers now because of where you are living?
They are all avid skiers because of where we are and because they're not good at hockey. Although my 6-year-old is very likely going to be a good hockey player. But yeah, they're all super skiers. They did the race program. They were never super into racing in terms of competition. Where did you finish in the race? They're like, I don't know, Dad. I just did the turns and whistled and So my eldest is out of racing this year, and my middle guy is doing like bumps and jumps. So he's twin tip skis and rail slides and stuff. And then my 6-year-old has just started the full pre-race program. So every Saturday, Sunday, he goes into a program all day and skis with his friends.
So I had always been told that you have two choices when you have kids growing up. You're a skiing family or you're a hockey family. And
Yes.
that the skiing family is maybe a better lifestyle for the parents because you're not standing in freezing cold hockey arenas. You sound like you've got like a little bit of both.
Yes. We had a little bit of both. I mean, so I grew up playing hockey, and I thought if I have 3 boys, they're going to play hockey. And my first guy told me from the start, I don't like hockey, Dad, but I did the thing. I coached his team. He was terrible, so we don't want to even do it. And then my second guy was interested in hockey, but not good at it. So it was just too much because when I grew up in Mississauga, we had, 12 teams all within 5 to 20 minutes of our house. So the whole league was really close. But now we got to drive to Orangeville, Shelburne, Barrie. So when it's an hour to your game, an hour before the game, an hour at the game, an hour, and you're not even with your kid, right? Your kids, right? So it's just a lot up here. Even for house league, you got to do that because there's not enough teams in Collingwood. So we chose skiing because we can all do it together.
Yep.
And then we'll see what happens with hockey with the little guy. If he's really good at it, then we'll figure that out.
Steve, I've never asked you this. Did you play hockey growing up?
Mm-mm.
No? You were just
man.
Mixed martial arts from 6 years old? Is that...
I didn't do that either. Poor kid, man. We played roller hockey in the neighborhood in the tennis courts. That was it. We don't have the same. I mean, it does to some degree, but we don't have the same hockey culture that most of Canada does here, right? Because it never gets cold. There's no such thing as a backyard
ice rink
pond here, right?
Right.
That doesn't happen, right? All we do is, I mean, usually it was the kids though with more money, right?
Okay.
That played. So we were not in that group. So I was pretty good at video games when I was younger. Let's put it that way.
Oh, see, we didn't have video games when I was young, growing up, but just because they didn't exist. I'm Steve. I'm 47, by the way, so I know I look youthful and handsome, but I'm actually much older than you guys. I think Storey's
You're not that much older than me, man.
We call it undercover old, is what we call it.
All right, enough about the Tom Storey Show. How to raise your children playing hockey. Let's get into this market. What's going on? How has let's call it? I'm going to call it rural. Maybe it's not, but how has the
resort market,
the outside of Toronto market fared? What's going on?
Well, we're kind of unique. We're not just sort of the outskirts of Toronto because we're so far north. It's vacation homes and stuff like that, and it's people living the lifestyle, the West Coast lifestyle. We're kind of filled with anyone that went out west for school or something like that. When they come back to Ontario, they need to live in Collingwood because it has that West Coast feel. Okay. But yeah, we're directly linked to Tom's market in terms of so many of our buyers come from there. They're weekenders. They're moving from there, so we kind of flow 2 months behind what they're doing. But we've had a huge spike in pricing. The average sale price pre-pandemic was $650. Now we're closer to $1 million. It's become a little bit less affordable for people. We've had it open up into, $2 million sale was a really big deal. So if you had a $2 million house, it might be harder to sell. It might take you 6, 8, 12 months. And now that ceiling is kind of like 4 or 5 million.
Wow.
So it's kind of like in Muskoka, if you say something's listed for 10 million, then people go, oh, that seems fine. But Collingwood didn't have that sort of consumer confidence, buyer confidence up there. So the pandemic sort of gave that. So, house is listed for 4 million, it's listed for 5 days, sells for 4.2. So we have a different, I think, buyer perception of our market. So that's the biggest shift we've had. And then the attainability. So our town is very filled with, so we run the Rural Ontario Medical Program out of our hospital, which brings young doctors up north because, of course, every doctor wants to work at St. Mike's in Toronto, right? So it spreads people into the rural communities, the ROMP program. And so we have a lot of young doctors. We have tons of schools in our area. So I think we have like 9 elementary schools in Collingwood alone. And then we have a ton of engineering offices. So our town is filled with young professionals with high salaries that now can't afford homes. So that's become a big shift for us because people would move to Collingwood for affordability. They're like, yeah, I'll go work in the Crozier and Associates office, the engineering office in Collingwood because it's way cheaper up there. And that engineering firm actually has a program for their employees to help get them a down payment to buy a house now.
Wow.
Like they'll give a down payment to their employees because the affordability has changed up here.
So, I mean, basically what happened, like it happened with every market, is Toronto buyers came to your market and made the prices go up. That's what happened, right?
Yeah, that's essentially what happened, is that the pressure came from Toronto, yeah.
And are they still existing today in early 2023? Are the Toronto buyers still a high percentage of the people purchasing properties up there, or is it now more localized because there's a bit more uncertainty with everything?
It's actually probably even more Toronto because the locals can't afford it up here.
Wow.
Right. The locals are staying put because a lot of people in our market, it's probably the same as you guys. Like, I think there's a high majority of people that couldn't afford to buy their house today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tons.
Right. So the locals are staying put. There's no point in making a switch for the locals. They're glad that they got in. So I think it's predominantly Toronto people, investors. It's weekenders. We've had this weird, I don't know if you guys are feeling this, we had this weird push of suddenly, like sometime in December, everyone's like, we need to buy real estate right now. Like, we sold 4 listings in the week of Christmas.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah. So we had a lot of buyers that bought, but our listings were a bit quiet.
Yeah. So, the other agents had the buyers that bought, right? So why are people suddenly, after 7 rate hikes, like when was the last one? December 7th-ish?
Yeah. Yep.
After 7 rate hikes, like, you know what? Okay, we're ready to settle in. Forget about Christmas. Let's buy a piece of real estate. We're usually, from December 15th to January 15th, we do all our business planning. We go on vacation. We're like, it is silent up here. And then we sort of middle of January, kids go back to school. And after the week of them being in school, it sort of just explodes for us, which I'm assuming the same for you guys, right, Tom?
Typically, I mean, we're hoping the listings show up this year. Like we haven't yet seen any proof of actual listings coming to the market. Are you guys prepping a lot for the next little bit that's going to come onto the market, or is it more of a wait and see approach for sellers?
We got a lot of listings coming up.
Okay.
I feel like the market is interestingly super active. There's a lot of clients that have come to us and we're like, why are you deciding to sell now? Like, where were you in April or February, right? And yeah, I mean, we're carrying probably about 20 listings right now.
Okay.
So our inventory is actually fine. We have probably an overage of inventory. And as you guys know, when buyers have choices, they take longer. And I think they're actually less satisfied with their choices if there's too many options. I believe I did read a book about, I can't remember what that book was called, but there's something about too many options, and then when they finally decide, they compare it to what they could have got, and then they're less satisfied.
Well, that's like when I watch any show on Netflix. Halfway through, I'm like, there's 7,000 other options. Did I make the right choice here? Like, am I going to commit the hour to this show, or am I going to find something else to watch?
Yeah, or will I just spend an hour looking at all the previews and not watching anything, and deciding I'll commit to one of these shows one day, but not today?
Basically. So right now, so Collingwood across the board, like if I want to buy a detached house in Collingwood, what's the average sale price today?
Those numbers just got put out. I would say 900.
Okay. And do semis exist up there?
Yep, semis and towns, but it's not enough to create. We do have the data for that. If I'm being honest, I don't pay much attention to it because when you're in it, you realize it's all blended together. So even as much as when people say, what's the average sale price? And we say it's, $1,050,000. We know that includes the town of the Blue Mountains, which has a lot of $1 million chalets, multi-million-dollar chalets. So it skews it, right? So we know it might be 1.4 in the town of Blue Mountains for 2022, and then 950 in Collingwood, and we're basically the same town, right?
So yeah, it's pulling from other areas, so it's hard to really like a full estimate of it. So one thing that is new this year in where I work in the city of Toronto is we have a new vacant home tax. Now, what I think is interesting is that in Steve's market, this has existed for what, 3 years, Steve? 3-4 years?
Oh, geez, man. I can't even remember. I think it was, 2018.
But
maybe 2017.
Here's where I'm trying to draw the comparison. I believe, Steve, that your vacant home tax in BC does not impact homes in Whistler. Is that true?
No. Yeah, so we have two. We have the City of Vancouver vacant home tax, and then we have the British Columbia speculation tax. So in Vancouver, you actually get taxed double if it's vacant. But for many, many years, most of the resort areas don't get that tax because they don't want to stick a $50,000 tax on some millionaire who owns a $18 million property in Whistler.
So here's my question to Chris. Now you work in a market that's not too dissimilar from where the purchasers are coming from what Whistler is. You think if a tax ever came into that area, that would do you think there's a lot of vacant property sitting in your market is basically my question.
Like vacant during the week or vacant overall? Because they come every weekend, right?
Less
So,
than
I don't know.
6 months of the year? Because that's the definition in terms of Toronto right now. If it's less than 6 months, it's considered vacant.
Oh, I mean, there's lots of homes, I don't think. So you're talking, 160 days a year, 180 days a year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Right? So if it's 180 days a year, I don't think there's, I mean, we have a lot of sellers that they look at their balance sheet and they're like, oh, wow, it costs $1,000 a night to have this chalet because we only use it for so many nights, right?
Okay.
So it would destroy us, I think, if it had to be 6 months. I think there's way too many people because a lot of people up here as well, they have the chalet for the winter and then they have a cottage for the summer in a different area, right? So they don't even come in the summer. So I would say there's lots of places that are vacant from when the snow melts to when it snows again.
Interesting. And you guys do more like seasonal renting as well, right? Like near the ski hills, it's like you rent for what's the season? Like what's the dates on the season?
4 months. So
4
we do
months.
4 months is generally December 15th to April 15th.
Okay.
Maybe 4 months, yeah. December 15th to March 15th. So it's sort of, from when it snows to after March break or beyond. And, that's the most difficult market to be in because the prices are changing every year depending on inventory and dramatically.
Right. And that's where the rental prices go crazy too, because people will pay like ridiculous prices for 4 months just to get near the hill, right?
They would when there's no inventory, they will.
Okay.
And then, pandemic, they actually paid way more in the pandemic because what was happening is they weren't renting it for just weekends in the winter. So a place that might have went for, say, 25 grand for the season would have went for 60 grand. And the
For
difference
4
is that
months.
but they were actually living there for the 4 months. So that's why it was like acceptable because they weren't just when the pandemic hit, they're like, we're just gonna move to Collingwood for the winter.
Crazy.
And now there was like 200 rentals that went on MLS for ski season this year, just so saturated. So then the renters wait until the very last minute and see how low they can get you.
Right.
How about purchasing though? Like, if you're in a ski resort, is it cool to purchase while skiing's going on because everybody's excited about it? Or is it like a typical winter market where things are really slow?
Super, like as of mid-January, it'll kick in. So we kind of have that like chalet and condo sales time with people that are there. Because there's always a turnover of people that are done. They've been there for 30 years or the kids don't come anymore. There's people that have rented for a few years because they're ski club members, which is weird. You don't have that out west, but we have ski club memberships like private ski clubs. And, they rent for a few years. They start liking the club. They're okay, we're ready to buy. We know. And then there's that turnover of people. So a lot of those people buy during the season. Then we have the excited people that come on weekends to go to Blue Mountain, which is the public ski hill that their friend has this condo. So they start going to open houses and they buy something spontaneously, which was different when those condos were 200-300 grand. Now that they're 500-600 grand, they're not buying so spontaneously. And then we have a spring market, which is a double. So now we have the regular residential sales. And on top of that, we have the people that was their last year using their condo or chalet. They're putting on the market at the end of the ski season. So we have a pretty solid spike. We have a kind of a double spring market up here.
Now, have you noticed that a lot of the talk going on right now with, a pending recession that we've been hearing about for 6 months and the rate hikes and everything is that people think that the first type of properties that you'll start seeing to be liquidated to the market will be secondary properties for people. Have you noticed anyone up in your neighborhood, maybe listings you're bringing to the market that is like, Chris, I had a variable on this place. My payment's up $2,000 a month. I'm not selling my principal residence, so let's list this thing. Let's get this done. Is that a realistic thing that's happening? Are you seeing that?
So I feel like we know it's coming for sure. Like if you got your mortgage in 2018 at 2.5%, and you're renewing in 2023 on your 5-year fixed, we're going to see that happen for sure. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had those exact conversations, but I have met with people who are listing and in our business, people will say, no, everything's fine. You'd be like, those guys are getting divorced for sure. For sure they're getting divorced. They're just not telling me because they don't want you to say to the, everybody thinks that as agents we're gonna be like, oh man, they're getting divorced, make a low offer, right? So I'm sensing as I'm reading people that there's some people that are like, my renewal comes up in April, I better sell this thing. I'm getting that sense, and I feel like we're gonna inevitably come to it because money was so cheap. Because and you and I talked about this earlier this week, Tom. People don't buy a property by the list price; they buy it by the carrying cost, right? So when someone will say, I have this much extra money in my monthly spend, I can spend $2,000 a month. What can we get for $2,000 a month? And they'll go and buy a property that will cost them $2,000 a month to carry.
Yep.
So now when that's going to cost them $4,000 a month to carry, is maybe breaking the bank for them. So, in a way, we're kind of, I don't know. I don't want to. That's a tough way to take listings when people are like, man, we got to sell this.
Sure.
But I kind of feel like it has to come. There's so many people that push their limits to get a weekend home for sure.
Yeah. So do you think that is people that were in pre-pandemic and now are those people will be affected, or is this only people that have bought at these really high prices with variable rate mortgages, that sort of thing?
I just feel like there's not very many people that went past February with a variable rate. I think Ontario, a lot of people go with fixed. It's just sort of, especially when you weren't, you were getting it for 1.9% or 1.2%. So it was kind of pretty cheap anyways. There wasn't much of a delta there. So I just don't know if there's going to be a lot of people that were sitting with a variable rate. And if they were, if they didn't lock in February, they definitely locked in April. Right. I think the banks were calling and saying, you better lock this thing in. So I don't think we're going to see the variable rate people. I think those people have already made their moves. I think it's going to be the 5-year fixed people
that are coming up on renewal.
To renew, like what are people renewing at right now? 5, 7, 6%?
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the Real Estate Video Course. Today's real estate industry has changed, and you can no longer rely primarily on door knocking, cold calling, and geo-farming. While these strategies still work, video provides something that these traditional methods just don't, and that is leads that reach out to you because of you and the message and content that you are providing. I believe that video is king, and that through video, you can leverage your message, create stronger relationships, and become the authority on real estate in your marketplace. The Real Estate Video Course is a 5-part course that will teach you the fundamentals of video, including why it's so impactful, the equipment that you need to invest in to get started, and the proven tips and strategies used to ensure long-term success. So go to videocourselogin.com today to become a true creator, level up your editing and production skills, and develop your real estate video plan to leverage your message to current and prospective clients. That's videocourselogin.com. The link is below in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code TOMSHOW at checkout for 10% off any purchase. That's videocourselogin.com and use the checkout code TOMSHOW. That's TOMSHOW.
It was just like if the 5-year fix that are going to be renewed for people that have weekend homes.
Yeah,
I feel like there's got to be a lot of people that, they can afford an extra $2,000 and they still have a $2,000 buffer. But if the carrying cost is now $4,000, that buffer's gone, right? So
yeah, I wonder if
people. Hang on, Tom. Those are people then that have bought like 2018 or
anytime before 2020. I think all the people that have bought during the pandemic and heard about the interest rate hikes, I think they all went fixed, and those renewals aren't coming up soon, right? So I think it's the 2018 buyers, and I think we had some 2017 buyers in 2022 that had to renew and weren't getting good rates. But we're not sure the impact yet, but I have to believe it's coming.
So there was a 2018, let's say, there a lot of rates were like 3.59 to 3.89. Those guys were qualified at 4.75. Now here's where I think you could be correct is if they stay with their own bank, they're just going to accept the new rate, and that new rate might be 5.99 like my bank's trying to do to me.
Yeah.
However, if I can qualify at, let's call it, I don't know, 7 or 8% for my loan, of which may be difficult, I can still, in some banks, like some banks right now are offering 4.79. So whether or not they lend in a more rural spot, who knows? But then you have to requalify. So the problem may not be does my payment change a ton? The problem might be, can I qualify? Because if I have to stick with my current bank, I may not be able to afford that new payment. But if I could switch to a new bank, which I may not be able to do because of the stress test, so now I'm screwed because of regulation, not because of can I actually still afford this or not.
It's interesting, actually, because I thought the rates were around 2.9 in 2018. They were up to 4.
So I know this because one of my brothers moved, and I also redid my mortgage in 2018, and I was at 3.59 at that point.
Yep.
My brother was tied into a particular mortgage it was one of those discount ones that tied you to it, and you couldn't necessarily get out of it. And I think he ended up at 3.89. So it was it was above 3.5.
Really?
For not a,
that could mitigate things then if that's the case, right?
It could be. It could very well do that. And then they came, a lot of people don't remember that rates were going up. Like 2018-19 wasn't necessarily a great year in a lot of places because the Fed in the States started to increase rates. And they were only dropped again because of March 2020.
Do you remember what the overnight rate was before the pandemic? Was it 1.5?
2.25. 2.25.
Was it? Okay. We'll have to look back at that.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
YouTube commenters in the comments.
Someone
tell
will
me
let
how
us
wrong
know.
I am.
Yeah, someone will let us know. Because the domino effect I'm thinking is like I have my own personal experience of this. So I bought a secondary recreational property in the pandemic. I don't live there full time. I go there on weekends. I rent it to my friends that want. I don't charge a lot of them. They just go stay there, right? But I took a fixed variable rate, which I hit my trigger rate, and my payments are now up on that specific property about $700 a month. And because of that, I've started to think, okay, fine, maybe I'll rent it legitimately a bit more here just to cover that difference so it's back to my initial payment. So what I actually think might happen here, Chris, in your market is the people that were in my position, maybe at higher price points as well, are going like, all right, we can still cover this, but we don't like this extra cost now that we didn't think was going to be there when we bought it. Okay, fine, we'll at least rent it out now for the season or something, or to cover our difference here. And I feel like that's the first domino before it gets to the, okay, fine, sell it because we just can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, or it could be because most people, they don't want to rent it during the season that they bought it for, right?
True.
Yeah.
So I think there could be an aspect to that is, they don't have to sell because they say it's bleeding them dry, but they're like, yeah, we don't like this payment anymore. So that would be a way better way to sell real estate to people. Like, I kind of changed my mind on this carrying cost, but it's good, right? Because we're going to be 30 to 60 days to sell properties for sure. It could be up to 90 days we're probably like 45 days average days on market right now.
Interesting.
Does that open up to then Airbnb? Is Airbnb a thing where you are?
So it's because we have 6 municipalities. You got to think about where I trade, and this is so you can drive this area in 30-minute radius of where I live. In a 30-minute radius, there's 6 municipalities and 2 counties. So there's 2 county governments and 6 municipal governments, 6 mayors, and all of them have different Airbnb rules.
Oh.
So
fun.
So so Collingwood has their rules on, you can only do it if you live in the house. You can rent a unit in your house or a room in your house. The town of Blue Mountains, they have licensable areas. So they have it all. They have a map that shows where your short-term accommodation, they call it STA, where it can be. And when you can get a license, you have to get a license to Airbnb it. Then when you go out to Wasaga Beach doesn't allow it. Clearview doesn't allow it. And then when you go to Meaford, there's the Glory. They've never had a problem with Airbnb, so they have no rules at all. The problem is that our town switched from a resort town to many people living here full time. So you would have a lot of people moved up to their chalet, changed their life. But when things got more and more remote, people didn't have to be in the city, right? Or they started kind of reverse cottaging. I don't know if you see this in Whistler. People started going to the city Tuesday morning, coming back like Thursday night or Wednesday night. So they get 2 full days in the city, pack all their meetings in, and then they spend 5 days up north instead of 2 days up north and 5 days in the city.
I like that lifestyle. That sounds good to me.
That's Tom Storey's schedule.
That's not true.
But that's the reverse cottaging thing that happened. And, I think, when more and more people started living here, what they started seeing is, well, I can't have like a stag party next door every day. You can't rent your chalet out on the weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So they started saying you can only have it because it's a resort town. Right. So if you're going to buy up here, you got to understand it's a resort town. People come here to have fun. They don't come here to be quiet and bird watch. So there are parties. There are huge groups, driveways full of cars. Like that's what it is. So they just tried to segment it. So Airbnb is possible here. And in Meaford, they've just never had such an influx of Airbnb that they needed to make rules around it.
It's not a problem until it is a problem, and then you make rules about it, right? That's too bad because I know Steve's really into bird watching, so I guess we'll have to skip Collingwood next time he's in Ontario.
That was what David Foote, he did Boom Bust Echo. He predicted that that's where we would be right now. We would be a bird watching community.
A bird watching community. Interesting. Wow. Chris, I want to rewind here a little bit. Okay. You have lived many places, right? Started in Mississauga. You taught overseas. I want to get into that for a little bit because, first of all, what was life like before you were selling real estate? Where were you living? I think people will be very interested in that. And then when you came to Collingwood, you came in not knowing anybody. It's not like you moved there because of family or anything like that. You came in not knowing anybody and built up a really big business really fast. So maybe start, what was prior life like before kids in real estate, and then the last however many years where you've built this thing up?
Before kids in real estate, I lived overseas for 7 years. I lived in Korea for 3 years, and during that time, my now wife lived in Mexico. And then we kind of we're high school friends, and we kind of changed our relationship and moved to the next level when I was in Korea. And because of that, my wife was a licensed teacher at the time, her master's in education. At that time, I was just teaching English in Korea. She got a job at one of the best schools in the world in Tokyo, because it was the closest she could get to be at a good school. So then I eventually moved there, got my master's in education, and I got a job at an international school. She was at the American school in Japan, which is world renowned. And then I worked at Tokyo International School. So we were both grade 3 teachers, and we had our first son in Japan. And that was I kind of was always craving more. I mean, when you're a teacher, it's Groundhog Day. Grade 2s come in, grade 4s leave at the end of the year. You have a great summer, you come back, and you're like, man, I have grade 2s again. I have to teach them times tables. I got to start again. Every year was just like, man, I'm doing the exact same thing. I don't know how many years I can do this without like. Right. So I kind of thought we would own a private school, and because I just said to my wife, like, I can't classroom teach my whole life. I've been in the classroom for 10 years. She had been in the classroom for more than 10 years. So we moved back here with our 4-month-old son in July 1st, 2008. And if you guys can remember back that long, I think Storey
a booming market, right? A booming market.
Yeah. Storey was in high school then. Well, in September 2008, the world economy crashed. And we had left a bunch of money in Japan. Our mortgage on our house here was in Japanese yen through Lloyd's of London in. So we kept our bank account there, and our mortgage was being paid. It was pennies. It was so great. It was a 1% mortgage. And then when the currencies flipped, they called and said, well, you have to correct your LTV, and we'd like you to give us $40,000. And we were like, oh, well, we saved that money so we could take a year off and just like have our son and figure out what we're going to do next with our life. My wife wanted to get a teaching job. Very hard in Ontario to get a teaching job if you have like amazing experience and a master's degree. Both of us have amazing experience, amazing references, master's degrees. They're like, well, get in line. There's no jobs for you guys. So world economy crashed. They basically, our house was, because of the currency flip, worth far less than our mortgage amount. So they kind of pressed us with that. We had no jobs. We couldn't get teaching jobs. I started tutoring to make money, and I was tutoring 17 hours a week for $50 an hour to sort of support the family. But yeah, we were like borrowing money to pay our mortgage and get by. So I decided I should move quickly. I was always curious about real estate, and I started taking the courses. They're like, it'll take about a year to do. I was like, there's no way. I can do this fast. Took the first 2 courses, then tried to sign up for the residential course, and I couldn't get in for 9 months, and I would have had to go to like North Bay to take the course. So I took the commercial course first, because back then when you got your license, you had to take 3 courses, and the last one was either commercial or residential. And after your 2 years articling, you went back and took the commercial. Mm-hmm. So before I'd ever sold real estate, I took the commercial real estate course, which was incredibly difficult, never selling real estate and having to understand all the numbers and stuff. And then so 3 months after starting my courses, I got my license and just dove into real estate in a town that I knew no one. And I had a baby and a pregnant wife and no money. So
Chris, did you ever have a moment?
There was some drive there.
Did you ever have a moment that you're like, why did we leave the life we had to come back and start from zero, and things are challenging and the time of the world economy was not very good? And you like, oh shit, what do we do?
Every night for about 2 years.
Okay.
Every evening when the kids were in bed, we would look up the job fairs. And the first year we mainly did it at the end of, like, once I had my license for a year and I hadn't really started selling real estate, I was still too afraid to do it because, I was like dabbling in it because I kept having to teach. Mm-hmm. So it took me a year before so 2010, I started selling real estate, but it was around then when I was like, we could just go to the job fair in March, and in September of 2010, we could be each making $100,000 a year internationally. Like we made, such great money at teaching overseas, not compared to real estate, but, it was only 7% income tax. And after all of our expenses and traveling, everything we did, we put away $10,000 a month. So as teachers, to save $120,000 a year is just not real. You could have 2 teacher salaries, and after all their taxes, the combined amount is $120,000 a year,
right?
Of after tax dollars, right? We thought about it. Yeah, we were like, yeah, we should just go to this job fair. Then it gets exciting, right? Because you're like, where would we go next? All of our friends were like in Dubai and living in Spain and Barcelona and working at these amazing schools. And when you live international, when you're an international teacher, you have so much vacation. We were always like on a plane. We're in Australia. We're in India. We're in China. We're walking. They're like, we have 4-day weekend. We're like, let's go to Great Wall of China. So it was that you can romance that life. So right. There was a lot, and I think it was my wife's choice. We would have gone, but she always wanted to stay home with the kids. And the opportunity was, if I could build this business, then she could stay home. So we kind of just buckled down. And in 2010, we got traction, and I did like 11 ends in my first year of real estate, and I made like $120,000 or something.
Gross.
Remember yeah. Oh. I was at, I think, 131,000 gross, something like that. So, and I remember I was at Century 21, and everyone was excited about, what award, and I had won this Emerald Award.
Sounds fancy.
My good buddy that he was one award level lower than me. He's like, how did you make so much money? I was like, I don't even know how much money I made. What do these awards mean? Because we were so behind and so broke. And you know how I've done my business story. I'm heavy marketing, so I was pouring money into like the business I want to be versus the business that I am. Lots of people will be like, I won't spend the money until I make the money. I was like, I'm going to spend the money and get there.
So when you made 131, what did you spend, like $70,000 that year? Like, did you make any money at the end of it?
Oh, we were deeply in debt after that year.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I was still like, lines of credit and credit cards. Like I remember I had to buy a MacBook that year, and I went to this Georgian Audio, and they gave me like a Desjardins Visa. And that, like, if you sign up for this card, then you can make payments every month, $50 a month, to buy this $2,000 MacBook. But I needed it. Like I needed to run my business, and the MacBook I brought from teaching wasn't working. So in my first year of real estate, I basically put a MacBook. I bought a MacBook on a payment plan because we had no money. My first year of real estate. Sorry.
Going through that experience and now thinking to the success that you found in the last basically decade of the growth of your business, having that experience, you think that was a good experience to have, looking back and going like, okay, I know what it's like to struggle and to flip my life upside down and move somewhere new, where that no matter how bad the news headlines get, or we're told the market is, like, I've beaten worse than this. Like, here's just another little opportunity I'm going to deal with.
Yeah, it took me a while to have that perspective. I had to talk to a lot of sort of more veteran agents, and there was a couple agents in my office that had got their license in like 2002, and they remembered, I don't know if your office do this, they do this thing called duty time. You sit in the office for like 4 hours on a Saturday. I always think of DOOTY instead of DUTY, doing duty time.
My mind went there too. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, well, that's after my coffee in the morning when I do duty time. We did, and they would say like, yeah, we would sit in the office. People would walk by the office. They'd tap on the window. We were at I was at Century 20 when I first got LePage downtown. They'd walk in. They'd ask you to go show them a house, and they would buy the house that day.
Crazy.
So
yeah, different world,
These agents struggled for the first 5 years of my business. There was all these agents that were like, it's been so easy. Walk-ins. Also, like, internet wasn't huge then in terms of like the MLS system and websites. Like, I was the only guy to have like a website and do videos when I started real estate up here. So I kind of felt like, poor me. I got to work so hard. Like, I did. My first 5 years was 12-month listings. So I would say 50% of the offers never came together because we didn't get together like on price. Like, it was like that last gap is 10 grand. They're like, why don't you throw in your commission? I'm like, well, my commission is only 7 grand, buddy. I can't throw it in.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make the deal come together because my average sale price when I started was like 350 up here, maybe 300. So as I got through that, I realized, man, like, I'm glad that I had the grit and resilience and the hustle to go do that. And then even more so now, like, I really felt it at the beginning of this year when everyone was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I was like, I know. I sat down with my team. I was like, I know exactly how to do this, guys. We're just going to be doing real estate differently, right? We're not going to be, it's not like, oh my goodness, how do we do this? Well, instead of writing a bunch of offers and you're in multiples and you miss it, you're going to be writing offers. You're going to be being patient with sellers. A seller says, I think it's worth 20% more than market value. You're like, you know what? I've told you all I can tell you. You don't think I'm the market expert. That's fine. Let's list your property and let the market tell you. Right. The market will tell us by, we all know there's a sliding scale, like no showings at all. You're like 15% off, like you're way off. Couple showings, no feedback. Then there's like a few more showings, but no offers. Then you get closer to buyer perception of value. Then you're like, maybe you get a shitty offer, right? And you get a few showings. And then you get to like, we got 1 or 2 good offers. It's a scale. So I just learned to let the market tell them and to talk about price reductions, to give seller updates, regularly. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the online traction. Here's people on my website. Here's what's happening on social media, which I resisted at first. My web person was like, you got to get on Facebook. I was like, no way. That's just for fun. No one wants to see my business stuff on social media. Who would want to see business on social media? Turns out I was wrong. And then I spiked that pretty quickly to get my numbers up. I remember giving away a couple iPads for the first 500 and then the second 500. So I was like, this is worth $2,000 to make sure that I have at least 1,000 followers. Because I would see all these agents that were like, we have 46 followers. I'm like, that is awful. Like, if I have to go to a listing presentation and say like, well, I have 46 people that follow me, it's not gonna look good. So I remember spiking that, but I feel like I knew exactly what to do when all this happened. I told my team, we're going to do all the things we didn't have time to do before. We're too busy to do. And we're going to dig in and we're going to make more calls. We're going to go on more appointments. We're going to take people to lunch. We're going to do all this stuff to like make sure you're out in the community. We're going to host our events again. We did our movie morning fall festival because we didn't do it in the pandemic. And it's like, this is just different. It's the same thing. You're going to get up in the morning. You're going to do different tasks today, but you're still going to be selling real estate. We had our second best year ever in 2022.
Amazing. And when do you think the moment happened that it went from, okay, we're just getting by here, we're surviving, we're paying off our debts, I'm making some money, but I'm spending most of it as well, to the click where, like, listen, legitimately, like, you're probably the biggest team in your area. You're a big real estate team. You guys have all the listings up there. You've grown massive market share. Like, when did you even realize that was a thing that was possible? Like, did it just naturally happen, or this was the plan?
I think so. First of all, when I got in this business, I looked at, there's a couple, Doug Gillis, Ian Hawkins. I think they were the 2 big guys at the time. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to be number one. I'm not just going to be another one of the agents up here. I'm going to be the best. So that's sort of, Tom, how my mindset is. Like, I'm going to go do it if I'm not half-assing this. I didn't know what it looked like, though. I didn't know it was a team. I did as best I could in my first 4 years on my own, and sold however many 45 homes in my last year alone. But when you're selling 45 homes, there's so many showings and listings, and I had an assistant, and I was like, man, I'm just like, I started having people like leave me messages like, we've picked another agent because you're too busy for us.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Karrasch Real Properties. That's right, my co-host Steve runs an amazing real estate team in the Fraser Valley. If you're someone looking to get more insight of what's going on in the Fraser Valley real estate market, I would highly recommend reaching out to Steve and his team. They're going to tell you what you actually need to hear, and they're going to exceed your expectations all the way throughout the transaction. I've met Steve and his entire team in person, and they're all people that are really, really passionate about what they do. And a lot of their business comes from repeat and referrals, so it's no surprise that they've continued to be in the top 1% of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board for many, many years. They service Cloverdale, the Fraser Valley, and Surrey, and they know what they are doing. But don't just take my word for it. They have over 95-star Google reviews online. If you're looking for good advice that's not salesy with real people delivering really great results, I would highly recommend reaching out to Steve and his team. You can find them online at krproperties.ca, or in the show notes. You can go in there and you can book a call directly with Steve or someone on his team at a time that works best for you. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Fraser Valley, Cloverdale, or Surrey, I highly recommend Karrasch Real Properties. And now, back to the show.
This is what we've done because you didn't get back to me on time. So I started feeling like I want out of this. My strengths are with people and with leadership and with coaching and training. And I said, I could teach people to do this. So I'll just buy into my brokerage. And then my broker owner wasn't ready for a partner at that time, and we probably weren't a good fit as partners anyhow. But he said, why don't you start a team and make Chairman's Club? He said, they call us all the time with referrals, but we don't have referrals. So we give them to Ian Hawkins. He's our number one guy. So I was like, oh, a team.
What year was this? What year did the team start?
2015.
Okay.
I think it was might have been like December 1st, 2014, because, our awards year starts a bit off.
And when you thought about creating the team, because the structure right now, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you are still actively involved in everything, but you're not showing all the properties or doing everything. Like you've kind of taken a step back as being a true business owner, just not just like an operator. Was that from day one of the team, or was that a transition over time here?
That was organic. I knew that right out of the gate, I wanted to be there to help buyer clients, but not show the homes.
Okay.
So I started kind of organically without planning it, because I'm kind of a jump out of the airplane, ask for the parachute later kind of guy. I just figure I've solved bigger problems.
Steve has 3 parachutes in his backpack.
Yeah, right. And my wife is like, meet the pilot, check the plane, check your parachute 100 times. I'm like, we'll just figure it out on the way down. So I got 2 really great people to join my team right away that are still with the team. 2 high performing agents in the office that, one of them just really wants people to work with and have that feeling, because real estate can be lonely, right? If you're just on your own. And the other one was just like, I don't want to ever open social media or build a website. So she's like, if you ever start a team, I'm in. So I got those 2 big guns and myself right away. And I just kind of started because people are kind of afraid to let other agents work with their clients and friends because they might steal them. I was so burnt out, because this business can completely suffocate you and take your life. Like, clients call you at 9 p.m. on Friday, and everyone wants to be the most important person to you. So I just sort of organically, without having a plan, realized I want to teach these people to give the buyer service that I have and the listing service that I have with my brand and my marketing, my excitement, my energy, my network, but more people to help me do it. And I just had this, innate feeling of like, I can scale this out and because what was happening is people were upset they weren't getting the level of service from me that they expected.
But not you necessarily, but the service level.
Before when I didn't have other people,
right.
I just didn't have enough time. I couldn't do myself. So I was starting to let clients down when I was on my own. But then when Leanne Matthews would show up, they might be surprised. Oh, Leanne showed up to show me this homes. And then,
we like her way more than Chris. This is great.
Yeah. And then you get the playful text. They're like, thanks for sending us Leanne. She's way better than you. But I had to have that culture, right? I knew from the beginning, I have to be replaceable. If they're getting the same service, the same communication, the same care, the same people, not paperwork belief that we have, and it's money's a byproduct of hard work. We're not commission breath. We're not chasing deals. People can feel that, right? If you're just there for the people, and that's what I wanted to build, and they were all on board for that. We're not salesy. We're not pressuring you. And, you know, we have this sort of reverse buyer situation that we do up here. I don't know how you guys work with buyers or your teams do, but, you know, I was.
What does reverse buyer mean? What do you mean by that?
So instead of getting a buyer and trying to find them a house, we do education first, because we have so many different ages. So we get to educate them about our region. Then they educate us during that process about themselves, because people will be like, I must have a bathtub. And then you show them homes, you're like, you don't care about a bathtub.
Right.
You know, I must have a south-facing lot. I'm like, you don't even care about that. So we can kind of figure our clients out. So what our process is with buyers is, I'm not going to find you your house. I'm going to teach you about real estate and show you real estate until we narrow down what you want. Now I know you need 4 bedrooms. Now I know a garage is a must. Now I know these neighborhoods don't work for you. Now I know these price points don't work for you. So then we're down. We're like, okay, so you need a $600,000 home in Georgia Meadows or Creekside. Now I know what you want. So when a 4-bedroom comes up in that, I'll show it to you, because I'm not going to show you any more 3 bedrooms. I'm not going to show you anything, you know, downtown, because you don't want to be there. Your kids or the school matters. You want your kids to go to Admiral. So we reverse the process to narrow down. This is the house they want. Instead of, let's go try to find, do you like this one? Do you like this one? Do you like that house? What do you think of this house? Right. We're taking notes and figuring out, and then we kind of, in the nicest way possible, tell them what they want. Right.
I think Steve was the first one that kind of taught me. I remember, Steve, we would talk years ago, and Steve was like, yeah, my buyer consultation is like 2 hours. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Like, what? What do you mean 2 hours? Like, what are you talking about? Are you showing them like a movie? Like, what's going on here? But he was like, I don't know, Steve, you can talk better about this than me. Like, you were the first one that really got me to drill in on like that initial consultation. We're going to go over all education. We ain't seeing no houses, and you're going to learn everything. So you're still doing that, Steve?
Yeah, it's a lot usually, not a lot faster. It's a faster process now. But I remember the first time I was on stage at a Richard Robbins thing, and he asked me about that. So tell me about your presentation and how long. One of the questions was, how long does it take? And as soon as I said 2 hours, the whole audience just shut down. They were like, I'm not doing 2 hours. Like, get out of here. But I was like, listen, as soon as you do a 2-hour buyer consult with someone, first of all, you've taken the time to build the rapport, which is massive in our business, right? The client has to trust you and know that they're not just getting, jammed into a property.
Yeah.
The second part to that is, every question you ask before you go see a property is a better use of your time and your client's time. So if you're not asking about, for instance, how many cars do you have? How many parking do you have? Do you want to park them inside? Do you want to park them outside? Like, until you have those questions answered by a client, and then, like you had mentioned, then actually take them out and find out that everything they told you is wrong. But once you do that, now you have a starting point. And where a lot of agents lose their, I was going to say shirt, but probably mind, is this is the 15th home I've shown you. And this doesn't work. Like, generally speaking, on my team, Eric and Chanani on my team, if we take more than 3 buyer trips with a single client, and that's 3 houses per trip, if you see your 10th or 11th house, you're probably more confused than when you started.
Yeah, totally.
Because I haven't done my job of nailing that down. So it sounds like a very similar process of like, okay, we really got to get micro on what you're looking for and stop worrying about what the market's doing and find out, does this house fit your needs? And I don't think most agents, what do? Hey, Chris,
I'll meet you at the house.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go see it. You wanted to see that one? Cool.
And they want to just get out and see the homes because it feels like you're working. So just like Storey said, you have 3 parachutes. So I was doing the same thing you did, but even to this day, our buyer consultations happen at the first house you meet the buyers at. You got an online lead, you call them, whatever, and then the buyer. So plan to have a 1-hour showing with a client. We'll sit in the house that I showed them, and we'll talk, and we know the questions to ask. And honestly, if I were to sit down with someone for 2 hours, I'd take all these notes, and I'd be like, they don't even know. They don't know. And even more, and maybe more so in a primary resident market. But when you're buying a weekend home, people drive up Airport Road or the 400, and they have all these like dreamy visions of what it's going to be like up here. And they're like, no subdivisions. I will never live in one. I'm moving from Oakville. And then they come up, and what we find is people don't buy a comparable type home up here. They buy on alternatives. So people will buy what else can they get for their money? So they might be thinking, oh, I want a chalet with privacy. It's going to be so great. And I'll be like, oh, do you have kids? Well, they're going to have to go to school and they're going to be playing sports. You're going to be driving back and forth into Collingwood. So maybe you should drive back and forth to the ski hill and have your time. And you're going to be in a residential area where they'll have friends to play with. You won't have to be play dates every day. They'll walk to school. So as I got better at it, I could narrow that down because they have all these visions of grandeur of what they're going to get up here. And then I show them. And sometimes they're like, you know what? I don't want an old century home downtown Collingwood. I'd like to be in a subdivision where I'm getting more house for my money. I'm getting a bigger lot, or I'm getting a double car garage. I don't need to do renovations. It was built 6 years ago. So when they say there's no chance I'm getting a subdivision, I'm like, let's book them into a subdivision home just so they can go in and go like, wow, I can get this for 800 grand. I can get this. This is crazy. This is a granite countertop, no renovations needed, finished basement. So sometimes I just kind of like override them, being like, I'll be the real estate expert here. I'll show you the homes. I'll show you a variety of homes. And we always tell them, I'm going to show you 5 homes today. They're all going to be very different. Just so you know, you're not going to find your house today, right? You're not going to find your house today. We're looking at homes. We're learning about you. That's my buyer consultation. And that's the sort of process we do with the team. And there's also a little bit what I realize kind of disarms them because they're worried like there's a salesy real estate guy. And then we're like, you're not finding a house today. They're like, what?
Right.
They're going to try to sell us real estate.
You're not in a rush, are you? That will disarm anybody. It's like, what? No, of course we're not in a rush. It's like, yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah, I was like, it's a good thing you guys aren't in a rush, and this isn't a desperate thing for you. And they're like, oh, he knows. Like, yeah. This is all they want to hear is that, right? So, that's the whole reverse buyer thing. And just to dial back, you had asked Tom, like, when did I realize that I was successful and profitable? First of all, I'm terrible with money, so that's an issue for me. I always think it's endless, so I'll just keep spending it. I'm not very cautious. But a couple things. So first of all, I started making a ton of money, but I wasn't enjoying my life, so I hated that. I'm like, yeah, look how much money I have. That's great. And then I started the team, and I started making less money because I was giving business to the agents on my team, and my splits at the beginning were not good for running a business.
Right.
Because I wanted to be attractive for agents to come on my team, and my Wendy and Leanne will to this day will joke, oh, the good old days. When they were making more money than I was making.
Did you have to have a tough conversation with the team at some point saying, hey guys, for us to survive, profitable, we need to change the splits here? That must have been a tough conversation.
I thought it was going to be tough, but I realized just how much money they were making. And I showed them, you guys are making more money than me, and I'm paying all the bills.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to skew this. As an example, it was 50-50 on a listing. So I was like, okay, so it's 50 for the team. And I've from the start, and this is a Christopher and Vidiata thing that I learned before I even started the team way back in the day, that there's no split with me. There's a split with the team. I only make money if there's money left, right? So I go 50 team, 50 agent, and I go, so out of your 50%, you have 0 expenses. I'm going to pay the employees. I'm going to pay the marketing. I'm going to pay for the photography. I'm going to pay for the signs. I'm paying for your business cards. So now it actually turns out that it's 30% to the team, 20% to the expenses, and 50% to the agent. Right. So I was like, we just can't do it. So we skewed it to a 60-40, right? Where 60 team, right? Out of the 60 team, 20 goes to expenses. So 40 team, 40 agent. So I was there like, that sounds fine. And then I over the years, I've made a better and better, buyer side of things and stuff. And even like if there's like a really, really super amazing listing that's a super close friend of mine, it might be a 70-30 on the listing. And they're like, fine. They're like, right. I get 30, I have no expenses, and I'm going to get 5 buyers off this listing.
Yep.
And then we skew it heavier for the buyer side, so they get more of the buyer side because they got to meet the client, they got to do the buyer consult, they got to build trust, they got to do a lot of work with all these new leads. And then it'll be different if like the lead comes directly from me or whatever. So we've skewed that, but it was a different conversation. But interesting enough, and these people's story, I went up to Matt Regan's cottage, and he invited Mark Ferris, Mike Heddle, Sean Ziegelstein, and me. So the
legends of real estate. It's the yeah.
And I just made chairman. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I think Regan's number 4. And
how did I get in this room? Basically, I have those thoughts all the time.
I was number 144, and I'm like, what the hell? But I think they saw I was running my business, so they, Regan was, we met in Italy at the Chairman's Club thing, and he's like, this guy, should make this happen. Anyway, so and they when I told them my splits, they said, we want to come work for you. You would make way more money if we work for you. So that, I think that was pretty cool, and that made me realize, shit, I need to fix these splits.
What's the how many team members now? So there's a few administrators, and how many team members are there? How, like salespeople?
We have 5 agents and myself, and then we have 6 admins. So it's like 6 agents, 6 admin, and then we have Wendy, who has been with us from the beginning, she had to give up her real estate license because of tax purposes, because her husband has a job in the States, but she wanted to remain a part of the team. So she's kind of like a coach. Right. So the agents can call Wendy when they have a tough deal, or they're working through, Schedule A and what clauses to put in, or a tough client. If I'm not available, they can call Wendy, because Wendy's an absolute gem. We have a picture of her on our wall, her head photoshopped onto Uma Thurman from Kill Bill, the yellow suit. Yeah. Because she's just the best. So yeah, we're 13 people now. Wendy's the coach, 6 agents, 6 admin, and I'm always heavy admin.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people I've talked to recently have said the same thing, where their agent and admin almost adds up the same. We interviewed Kaylee on the podcast last week, and her admin team was actually bigger than her agent team. Do you think that's just the direction here the industry's going?
I mean, I started from the beginning. I've screamed from the mountaintop. I think it should be that way. I think that they make you make more money. They make you sell more homes. You got to leverage yourself. You got to, I'm big on the unique ability stuff. Frank Sinatra does not move pianos. He doesn't sell tickets. He doesn't usher people in. He plays piano. He sings. Like, do what you're good at and outsource and pay someone else to do it. And people are always worried, well, I don't want to pay a salary 40, 50, 60 grand. I'm like, you don't have to pay 60 grand today. You have to be 2 weeks and see how this goes. And in the first 2 weeks, you have someone doing this for you. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. And agents are doing their own social media, their own paperwork, their own, staging, their own photography, editing their own videos. And just like, you should be going and doing what you're best at. Figure out what you're best at and go do that, right? But they're afraid because it's going to cost them, because you got to pay first, right? Yep. But once you leverage that and you realize, oh my goodness, I just bought back 30 hours a week to do the amazing things that have built this business, it's worth it, right? So you got to look at profitability, right?
Now, I got a real burning question for you. Now, we've already discussed that you are undercover old, right? Because you look young. You got a cool haircut. You wear cool T-shirts. You drive a Jeep. You got a sleeve tattoo. You're a cool dad, other than your wallet, your phone wallet. If anyone's watching on YouTube, can you show them?
My prayer book?
What is going on here? That is like an iPad in your pocket. Just the biggest thing I've ever seen. Even me and Steve have the small wallets. Every time I see Chris, I make fun of him about this. It's just ultimate dad mode. You take it out, you get your glasses on, and you just...
Listen, you got to fucking lean into it at some point. At some point, you're like, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm leaning into this.
That's the ultimate like dad mode. And when one of my friends found out that we were having a kid, he sent me a really clean white pair of New Balances, and I just have them in my closet. I haven't worn them yet, but
before this, I had my phone on a clip on my belt.
That's even worse. Oh my God.
Oh, thanks, brother.
We got a few more minutes here, Chris. Thanks again for being here. This has been a lot of fun. Steve, you got any burning questions to wrap up with Chris?
No, I really appreciate this. It was nice meeting you on here for sure. And yeah, I got nothing. I've just been listening. I've been enjoying this quite a bit.
Yeah, because normally I make fun of Steve, but I got you here today, so I can at least share it around.
What was your lead up? You were like flirting with me about being hip and stuff. You just wanted to tell people about my cell phone.
Yeah, I was just trying to build you up to then give you the shot at the end, right?
Did you want to go into any more about sort of the team and the why I built it the way that I built it in a little bit of a different way?
Yeah, sure. I think we got at least another. Steve, you got 5 more minutes at least?
I got 5, and then I got a hard out because I have to learn about the buyer rescission period in BC. I've got a webinar to attend.
Crazy.
Fun. So yeah, let's talk through the last few minutes here on team structure. What do people need to know if they're trying to build something?
Well, I think first thing that I realized is that you're not going to try to build what someone else built. You have to build what's going to work for you. Like if you love showing homes, go show homes. If you love the listing presentation, keep doing it. everyone's trying to figure out what someone else did and do that. And I kind of organically figured out, and I think really lucky having Leanne Matthews on my team because she really values her time and I was suffocated for time. So the first thing we did when we made our team agreements is we put in that it's time first. You must plan a vacation. You must have something to look forward to. Because as a teacher, there was always, you never went more than like 8 or 12 weeks before having another vacation and going away, right? So I suddenly had nothing to look forward to. And when you're so busy, you're like, oh, when I have a break, I'll go on vacation. But then you never get a break. And usually you do your best work the week before you go on vacation, which is so good for your business. So it's always great to have a vacation. Everyone's like, I'm so busy when I'm on vacation. We're like, that's because you did your entire task list before you left. And I always tell my team every day should be the day before you leave for vacation. That's your most
that's the mindset to be
day,
in. Yeah.
Right. Let's try to stay in that mindset. So Leanne really valued time. So we put in right in the agreements, like how many open houses you're going to do, how many weekends you want to work, how many weekends you want off, how many weeks you want off, how much money you want to make. And then I just built a system to value their time and be interchangeable. That's why I want everyone to be able to do everyone else's job and be there, because you got to be able to take 2 weeks off and not sweat it. Your sellers are going to be taken care of. Your buyers are going to be taken care of. We're not worried about the splits between the team or who makes what, because money's a byproduct of hard work. We're all going to make our goals. So it was helpful to me to put time first in building it. And then just, I think innately culture was important to me. Like I would say to them, like, I don't want any conversations like whisperers, like talk to me. There's going to be problems. We got to talk. We got to make sure it's fun. I want everyone excited to come to the office and not, dreading it. Talk to me about splits if you want to. Just let's put it all in on the table. So it was that like open culture of it better be fun to come here. Otherwise I'm going to be stressed because I feel responsible for all of your feelings, right? And your money and stuff like that. So that's why it was easy for me to give the clients away without feeling like they're going to steal my clients or what happens if they know my database. I was just open from the very beginning, which then built trust, which then the core started, coming together on that. And that's just how my team evolved. So I think if I could go back, I would have loved to have planned this going in. I think everyone should figure out, what do you want? Like, where do you see yourself working in the business? Like, what's going to be your day-to-day that would make you happy?
Yeah.
But also I think another thing I would do, man, is I would track everything. My database is not up to speed. There's missing information, spreadsheets are missing things. I would track every penny, every client, every gift I gave, my stuff's a mess on that. But that's sort of why I went to me as the leader and coach and guide, marketing expert, all the relationships with the clients and stuff, but not having to be hands-on for everything. I just knew I wanted that because I know what I love doing.
Yeah.
And that's why we have these big events and, we do all the social stuff and we're in the community and we have the community partners. We bring businesses together that promote each other and do events together and stuff like that. So to have like 750 people in my fall festival and like all that stuff was given from community members to give the beer, the food. And even when we had to pay for stuff like bouncy castles, we have an insurance company, give us $1,000 to pay for the bouncy castles. We have someone pay for the band. We have someone pay for the DJ because they get to have their brand above it. Like, someone that's in financial management or has other things. So
yeah, you've done a really good job with those B2B partnerships in your community.
I never wanted to be like, because I felt, you guys must get this. Hey, can you give me $2,000 for this event? We'll put your name on a poster. And I'm like, but can I add value to your event? Can I do something for you? Can I be there with a tent? Can I bring something? Can I bring like a photo booth and everyone takes pictures? Can I do something? I wanted to create partnerships. So when I was asking people for money for our events, I wanted to be like, no, this is going to be a partnership where I'm going to promote your business all year. I'm going to give gift cards to Northwinds. I'm going to, promote your business. That was just me being kind of sensitive to saying, can I have some money for my fall festival to give beer away? Right.
Yeah.
It was me being bashful and it turned out to be a pretty good thing. Right.
Okay. I think Steve has to go learn about the cooling off period in BC, which just sounds thrilling. I'm sure he can't wait to go into this fun little webinar here. Chris, thank you for being here. This is one of those episodes where I know I'm going to want to listen back before we release it, because when I'm here, I'm listening obviously, but I'm thinking about the next question as well. You said a lot and I want to kind of see exactly. So thank you for being here. This was great. You've been an awesome guest. For anyone listening or watching that wants to find out more about you and your team, where's the best place for them to go?
I think kelleherco.ca is our website, and Instagram, Keleher Co Real Estate. My personal Instagram is Keleher Official. Those are probably the best ways to find us. Check us out online and maybe even drop a little Google review.
And if they come to your movie events, you will dress up as Buzz Lightyear again?
Well, whatever the movie is next year, there will be a costume. I like the costume theme, and we'll do another theme like that. I'll be dressed as something hysterical to scare the kids because no one wanted a picture with Buzz. They wanted to point, but the parents would drag him over, and I'd be like, "Don't force them into this picture with me. They're afraid."
Oh God. Okay. Thank you everyone for watching on YouTube or listening on the audio side. We will be back next Sunday with a brand new episode for you. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in a week. Bye.
All right. Appreciate this,
Bye.
guys.